setting the record straight on why the empty chair that was supposed to have someone in it from the group opposed to the aluminum dynamics plant will stay empty. Let's go. Hello, everyone. Your host for this episode of the Southwest of Center podcast, Jeff Holzfather. And I have a short commentary today on why the chair that was going to be filled with a member of the group opposed to the construction of the aluminum dynamics plant is going to stay empty. I was supposed to have a guest for this episode, Kristen Bittigan. She reached out to me after my first commentary several weeks ago in which I said, I wish that we could fill this empty chair with someone from the opposition, those opposed to the aluminum dynamics plant, who would speak clearly and concisely and state their reasons why they're opposed to it, instead of the gutter talk that's been going on back and forth since this issue surfaced. Kristen Bittigan reached out to me, and I give her kudos for that. She said, I'd like to fill the empty chair. Great. I was looking forward to the conversation. We had some chat and text messages back and forth. Excuse me. There's something going around right now during the Christmas season. I think I've got a little touch of it. But anyway, Kristen Bittigan was going to be my guest. She reached out, and in the messages back and forth, she was very professional and friendly. And, I thought this would be a good exchange. We had it set up, a date and a time, and then the day before she was supposed to come in, she put a condition on this podcast that is legally and personally to me is not acceptable. She wanted to record it on her own, and she said it was because she wanted to assure quality assurance. Now, I'll get to that in a minute, but first let me tell you why I wouldn't agree to it. First of all, guests on the podcast are required to sign a media release. The first part of the media release is pretty cut and dried. It says that a guest will not come back and try to collect money for their appearance or their image from the podcast, whether it's commercially paid for or not. Second part of it says that under no circumstances will there be a third-party recording of the podcast. It is legally my property. It's my podcast. It's owned by an LLC. And there's some solid legal reasons for doing that. So it can't be rebroadcast, and so someone else can't repurpose it without my permission, which has happened quite a bit. It's a standard media release for television, radio, and now podcasts, which are fairly new on the scene, but are still governed by the same rules and regulations. So I said no. And the quality assurance part of it, where Ms. Bittigan said she wanted to record this to make sure that, I guess, it wasn't edited or distorted in any way. To me, it's really ironic, considering this is coming from someone who belongs to a group that has smeared the people that are opposed to it. And I'm talking specifically now about the posting that really made me decide to jump in here and do some commentary. And that was the posting when the group opposed to the aluminum dynamics plant slammed George Scott, the executive director of the Southeast Arizona Economic Development Group, said that he was on the take, or he must be taking money from ADI because he supports it. It was a smear, unfounded and totally a lie. But you see, that's what these groups have no problem doing. And at that point, I said to myself, we can't take this sitting down. So I will tell you this. After today's podcast, I'm tired of this. I'm not going to do any more that have to do with the group opposed to ADI, because with that, you have no credibility. Now, this is my question specifically to Ms. Bittigan. Quality assurance. I tell you what, let's ensure quality assurance on both sides. You send me the posts that you're going to put up on your group page so that I can go over them first and make sure that quality assurance standards are met. And I'll let you record this podcast. It's the same thing. But none of you probably realize this, and I'm not singling out Kristen. Like I said, I think she's probably a professional. She seems friendly. She has 2 young children. I'm sure she wants them to grow up in an environment that she thinks is supposed to be and will be pristine and protected. But this entire group has behaved way over the line when it comes to how they've conducted themselves with the conversation. For instance, let's talk about credibility. Someone posted something about the interview that I did with Joe Conrad, saying that it had no credibility for whatever reason. You see, I don't read their posts. I hear about this secondhand from people that read them or see them and then tell me about them. Why do I not read them? Because they're not worth my time. Now, here's why I'm not going to be spending any more time on the opposition, those opposed to the aluminum dynamics plant. You see, this podcast is not about you, and it won't be about you anymore. This podcast is supposed to be about people, politics, and economic development. I've put a lot of money into it, into the studio, into the support equipment, into the hosting services, and I'm not selling advertising. I run PSAs. I don't have sponsors. In other words, this is me, and it's all me, and I've put a big investment into doing something that I want to be a positive contribution to this community. And here's a few of the podcasts that I really don't think any of you have looked at because you're too busy trying to make yourselves feel righteous. I had a podcast on Desert Survivors. It's an organization that hires the mentally challenged and does what's called supported employment. Did a podcast on the Mescal Fire Department and how it's trying to increase and improve its fire services and its EMS on a rural budget, which is not easy to do. Had a podcast on the Benson and Wilcox hospitals with Gary Karchner, the CEO, on how they are providing really, really top-level care, again, on a rural budget. I had a podcast most recently on Golden Rule Vineyards and how Jim and Ruth Graham, who have had it for about 20 years, have worked their butts off to contribute to something that's part of a $5.6 billion industry in the state of Arizona. I had, Rabbi Benzi and Shemtov on to explain the holiday of Hanukkah and how there's a message there that can resonate with all of us. So, I'm trying to point out that this podcast is intended to highlight people, economic development, and once in a while some politics. I've had Representative Lupe Diaz on to explain state budgets. But of course, the members of the group opposed to aluminum dynamics don't know anything about that because they're so focused with their blinders on this issue of, and it is an important issue, but they don't have time for anything else. And all they want to do is be negative. That's all it is. I'll tell you what, here's the challenge. I just thought of this. There's a group here trying to pull together the elements that they need to build a park along Main Street here in Benson. I don't want to discuss the location because there's some negotiation that has to be done there to procure the land. But they want to build a park using volunteer labor and donations that would be a beautiful spot for people passing through to stop, walk their dogs. Maybe there'd be a dog park there. Maybe there'd be a place for food trucks to park and, make some sales. If you want to be a part of that and be part of something positive instead of always just being negative over one issue, then why don't you give us a call? And by the way, Southeast Arizona Economic Development Group and I are not, I'm not a part of SAEDG with this podcast. It's owned only by me. Southeast Arizona Economic Development Group also has not taken any money from Aluminum Dynamics. There's been no economic quid pro quo or otherwise of any kind. So there. Some upcoming podcasts. I'm going to have Rob Hegman from the Horseshoe to talk about how he turned a struggling business into one that's thriving and serving the people of Benson and creating jobs. Kirsten Smith with Spotlight Studios, how she is really making a difference in young people's lives by teaching them various kinds of dance. In other words, it's all about the good and no more about the negative. So, as far as I'm concerned, and I told Ms. Bittigan this, I said, hey, not going to have you on if that's your position that you have to record it for quality assurance. And again, this coming from a group that lied and slandered George Scott and has done nothing but spread misinformation. You see, here's how it breaks down. If you people were civil and you wanted to make an argument based on facts and not an innuendo, and you could avoid name calling and dragging someone's reputation into the gutter when it's completely undeserved, then you might have some credibility. But you see, you've lost the battle. That's the way it is. Thanks for joining us. We're in the holiday season. Happy Hanukkah. Merry Christmas. May God bless. Catch you next time.